welcome back to V2K Photography. Sony A7S III. I don't even know where to begin. Generally, the S series cameras in this alpha lineup is meant to be better in low light, so the S stands for sensitivity, light sensitivity. But better is such an understatement, right? Because this video that you're watching right now is being recorded at ISO 25600, 4K 25 fps, 10-bit 422 compression. The eye autofocus works just fine. Look at that. The face tracking works fine. The eye autofocus works fantastic. I'm just pushing the camera to its limits here. ISO 25600 and the aperture is f1.4. It's a 35mm lens. I don't have a longer lens right now with me. So it's already like pushing the camera to its limits with shallow depth of field and, you know, eye autofocus. I'm sorry, I'm standing outside, so you have a lot of birds with me, all right? So this camera is just not better in low light. It's a low light monster. A7S III is a mirrorless camera with 35mm full frame sensor of 12 megapixels. The sensor is a backside illuminated CMOS sensor. It has 759 AF points for fast and accurate hybrid focusing. It has 9.44 million dot electronic viewfinder. The camera can shoot up to 4K 120 fps internally in 10-bit 422 color compression. The camera is also capable of recording 16-bit RAW over HDMI externally. The camera costs 3,40,000 rupees, and is it really worth it? Let's find out. I know you guys would be interested in knowing how good the 4K 120 fps 10-bit internal recording with 422 compression is. But the problem is I can't do this right now because CF Express A type cards are so hard to come by in India right now. So I promise I will make another future video just on that topic with lots and lots of B-roll. Okay, so I promise that. So let's move on to the next best feature, which is the 4K 60 fps. Though it's not as slow as the 120 fps, the 4K 60 fps looks buttery smooth. Without any crop, you can just keep recording for 1 hour straight. The footage looks fantastic. The compression is awesome. The colors are extraordinary. Okay, so you can shoot in any picture profile that you want, even logs. There is no problem at all. So you can just keep recording in 4K 60 fps and it looks brilliant actually. Alright, we're not done talking about the ISO performance yet. The camera is absolutely good enough to use ISOs up to 12,800. There is some noise in the shadows, but midtones and highlights look pretty usable even at ISO 25,600. Some claim there is dual native ISO on this camera, but I'm a little bit skeptical about it because only once did I get a chance to see a clearer image, a much cleaner image at ISO 25,600. But usually it's the normal behavior. The quality of the image deteriorates consistently with higher ISOs. The dual native ISO is not something Sony has promised or advertised or even mentioned anywhere in the manual. So even if the camera is not capable or does not have or does not support dual native ISOs, I'm totally fine with it. That is not a complaint at all. Some claim there is. If it's there, that's brilliant. But based on my tests, I don't think there is. But I could be wrong. I'd be happy to be proven wrong. XAVC HS, there is a new recording format which is a higher compression of H.265, which is a much better codec than the 264. The images look fantastic and it is only available for higher frame rates. That's 60 fps and 120 fps or 50 and 100 fps. It's not available for 24 or 23 or even 30 fps. And next is the XAVC-S, which is the optimal quality for most of the contents. And there is also XAVC-SI, which is the intra-frame. And the intra-frame is something where each and every frame is compressed on its own and separately stored. You know, each and every frame is stored individually. So the file sizes could be higher in the intra-frame compression, but the computer need not work so hard to decode the codec. Whereas in the normal compression, so all the non-moving things would be compressed and clubbed together across the frames, and the computer has to work much harder to decode that codec, but it won't take a lot of space in your cards. Again, use the interframe only if you absolutely need to. Otherwise, I don't even bother recording with the interframes. Even the normal compression looks brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Alright, now we have full control over the autofocus speeds. It's not like the other Sony cameras where you can just choose from slow, normal and high. I've always found the normal to be much faster than the normal, and slow is way too slow. But now you have the ability to choose precisely which speed that you want to know, and the focus shift is buttery smooth no matter what speed you choose. Even the slowest, it is so smooth. Even the fastest, it's so smooth. It's not hunting, it's not jerky, it's brilliant. This footage was done with a 35mm 1.4 lens shot at 1.4. The focus shift is consistent and smooth across all the speeds. Come on, let's push it a little bit further. The same test was done with a 90mm f2.8 macro lens. The autofocus area is completely in oblivion, but still, the focus was way better than I anticipated. Who focuses something crazy like this? Nobody. The camera does not have any record limit up to 4K 30 FPS. That is brilliant. That means I don't have to set the timer on my watch for every 29 minutes and 30 seconds and go repeat the recording again and again. I mean, restart the recording again and again. I don't have to do that for longer events and longer recording. This is brilliant. All I get is just one file from the camera, and that is so good. Even the timecode syncing and all those things would be fantastic to work with. So I completely welcome that feature. And there is 1 hour recording limit for 4K 60 FPS and half an hour recording limit for 4K 120 FPS. That's okay, who cares? No one's going to shoot 4K 60 FPS for 1 hour long. If you have a use case for that, maybe you should consider a higher camera, not this one. 4K 30 FPS without any time limit is more than sufficient for most of the users, at least in my opinion. At least for me, I don't have a problem with that at all. You have human and animal eye autofocus. That's not new, that's in every new Sony cameras these days, so there isn't much to say anything about it. But I think the animal eye autofocus is not available in video recording mode. I think so, because the camera lets you choose between human and animal, but the camera does not behave properly on that. Every time I point the camera at the dog, it would just focus on the tip of the nose, which is the closest to the lens. So I don't know. That's the observation I have from the tests I did. So even the eye autofocus box was not on the dog's face. So yeah, this is the behavior. Just be mindful of it if you're planning to do something with it. You have absolutely no idea how much I respect the flip-out screen from the ZB-1, how much I appreciate the flip-out screen on the ZB-1. I can clearly see the current status of the camera without any obstacles like this, and that is brilliant. That is what I want. I can see that I'm recording. That gives me a lot of confidence that I'm not running out of space on the memory card, and the focus is proper and all those stuff. So that is a really welcome feature, and I completely respect it. And the thing is, the flip-out screen is not for everyone. This is subjective. Again, it's not a universal solution for all types of work with this camera, but a flip-out screen is a must-have for people like me who has to record themselves, has to see themselves recording. So that's something to think of. No, it's not a one-stop solution for every problem. And also we have a fully functional touchscreen now, and it's not limited to just focus. You can just use the touchscreen to navigate the menus, do the settings, even navigate the photos. You can navigate videos and whatnot, and a pinch in, zoom in, whatever you want, you can just do it. Like any Sony camera, we have 10 picture profiles and one without any picture profile. So you can choose anything that you want. You have 11 styles of recording, and I love the S-Log3. All these days we were only given 8-bit S-Log3, and the S-Log3 is way more complex for 8-bit. So this camera has 10-bit internal recording, and the S-Log looks brilliant, absolutely brilliant. We have been missing this all these days, and this camera just takes it to the next level. S-Log 3 is so good to see. It's so smooth. The dynamic range is excellent, which is like 15 stops. If you want to save some time in the color grading process, maybe you can just start shooting with the HLG3, which is much easier to color grade, and it still has a lot of dynamic range, up to 15 stops, and very close to 15 stops. I haven't done any scientific measurements of the dynamic range on this camera because I didn't have much time to use it, but just look at these photos. These are from raw images. I've just pushed I've made, let me put it this way, I've just made the photos as flat as possible so you can choose how to distribute the latitude that you want. This is not how I used to edit or grade my photos, but I'm just making it as flat as possible to bring out all the information from the highlights and the shadows. You get to choose how to distribute that latitude. The camera has an in-body image stabilization that supports 5.5 stops of effective stabilization. So the steady shot inside the camera gives a pretty smooth image stabilization even on the lenses that don't have built-in optical stabilization. The active stabilization will crop in a little bit, but it gives a much more stable image. The S-series cameras in the Alpha lineup are video-centric. That doesn't mean that you can't get great images from this camera, because most of the flagship cameras those days used to have only 12 megapixels and they rocked really good in low-light concerts, in low-light situations like even low-light sports and all this stuff. So this camera is no different. You can still use, it has excellent autofocus in the first place. So you can use this for concert photography, low-light sports, action, whatever you want, because there's a really good high frame rate on this camera. It can shoot up to 10 photos raw with auto exposure and autofocus, and that is brilliant. And it has a very deep buffer. You can shoot 200 JPEG images in one burst. So I think this is a pretty good capable photography camera as well. But the only problem could be when you try to crop in. That's when you will really run out of resolution. If you don't pixel peep, it should be completely fine. It is hard not to notice the massive improvement in the viewfinder. The viewfinder on this camera is a whopping 9.9 million dot resolution with a magnification of 0.9 times. You can also enable higher refresh rates up to 120 Hz on the viewfinder, and it looks magnificent. The dual card slots accept both CF Express Type A and SD card. I mean, both slots are compatible with both cards, and both cards are UHS 2 type cards, so you can choose to have two SD cards at the same time, or two CF Express A cards at the same time, or one this and one that, and you can use either slots to use any card that you want. That is amazing, seriously. The menu is way better now. The menu toggles between video mode and photography mode, and that could be a little bit confusing in the beginning, but you will get used to it in no time. Nevertheless, the options are much better organized now in a much more intuitive manner. That's so good. Full HDMI, that is a great addition. It is so reliable for external recording. I have never been a fan of the mini HDMI, and don't even get me started with the micro HDMI. They're so flimsy and so annoying. Full HDMI is the way to go, and this camera is absolutely brilliant in this aspect. I think the Sony A7S III is a near perfect camera for most users of the consumer camera products. Even if Sony takes another 4 years to release the new S4, that's completely fine, since this camera will serve fantastic until the technology catches up. There is no surprise that the A7S III is a massive hit in the Alpha lineup. I wholeheartedly recommend this camera for working professionals who need to deal with low light situation more often. The autofocus, the quality, the colors you get out of this camera will motivate you to work more with this camera again and again. I will see you in the next video. Until then, bye bye.